Moon in the Signs intro. Today we're starting a series on the moon in the signs. The moon is often reduced to emotions, moods, and sensitivity. That is true, but it barely scratches the surface. In a chart, the moon shows how you experience yourself when there is nothing to perform, prove, or explain. It describes your instinctive reactions, your private needs, your patterns of comfort, and the ways you try to feel safe when life becomes uncertain. It also reveals what settles your nervous system, what makes you withdraw, and what you return to when you need to restore yourself. This is why the moon is not only about feelings. It is about familiarity. It is about protection. It is about the inner rhythm you live by, whether you are conscious of it or not. Two people can both say they want peace, but mean very different things by it. One may need space and quiet, another needs closeness and reassurance. One feels secure through order and predictability, another through freedom to respond in the moment. That difference is not accidental. The moon explains it. The sign the moon is in shows how those instincts take shape. It changes the emotional style, the coping pattern, and the way a person looks for steadiness. Some moon placements process everything immediately and visibly. Others hold things in until they can make sense of them in private. Some need movement, some need consistency, some need control, and some need trust before they can truly relax. The same applies to attachment and daily life. The moon describes what feels natural to you, what you depend on without always realizing it, and where you can become reactive, guarded, or overly attached when your needs go unmet. It often shows the habits that keep you grounded, and the habits that keep repeating simply because they are familiar. In the natal chart, the sign shows the style, the house shows where these patterns play out most clearly, and the aspects show whether the moon moves with ease, tension, or intensity. So in this series, we're starting with the sign. We're going to look at how the moon operates in each sign, what it needs, how it protects itself, what helps it feel secure, and where it can become stuck in patterns that no longer serve it. No recycle keywords, no flat stereotypes, just how the placement actually works. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to follow the series, and book a consultation for a more personal understanding of your chart. Moon in Leo. Moon in Leo does not have small feelings hiding politely behind a curtain. It feels things with presence. This is one of the warmest and most expressive moon placements in the chart when it comes to emotional life, because what it feels usually wants to be lived fully, honestly, and with some degree of visible reality. Not necessarily theatrically every second, but definitely not in a cold, minimal, nothing affects me kind of way. There is very little emotional beige here. The moon describes what makes you feel safe, how you process experience, and what your inner self reaches for when life becomes overwhelming. In Leo, that process becomes proud, heartfelt, creative, and deeply tied to the need to feel valued. This is not a moon that wants to shrink into emotional invisibility and act like needing warmth is somehow embarrassing. It wants to matter, preferably openly, with affection, with recognition, with some sign that the love in the room is not being managed like a tax document. The point is emotional security through warmth and significance. That is one of the most important things to understand about Moon in Leo. Emotional safety is tied to feeling seen. These people often feel better when there is generosity, loyalty, sincerity, and real-hearted engagement around them. When they feel appreciated, welcomed, or genuinely included, their whole system opens. But when that warmth is missing, the system does not simply become neutral. It dims, because this moon placement does not thrive on emotional coldness. It likes affection. It likes loyalty. It likes the sense that its heart is received, not tolerated. That does not mean every Moon in Leo person is standing under a spotlight 24 hours a day demanding applause for answering an email. It means their inner life needs warmth. There is a strong link here between emotion and dignity. They often feel best when they can express themselves naturally and be met with appreciation rather than indifference. Their feelings are not usually detached from identity. What touches the heart often touches pride too. That can create generosity, courage, and emotional openness. It can also create dramatic internal weather when they feel ignored. That can make them seem emotionally bold. And in many ways, they are. Moon in Leo often has a natural willingness to love openly, care visibly, and invest real heart into people, experiences, and relationships. If something matters, they tend to bring themselves to it. If they care, it often shows. If they are hurt, it is not usually because they feel nothing. It is because they felt sincerely. Sometimes that response is beautiful. Sometimes it turns into emotional theater with very committed lighting. This is one of the main lessons of the placement. Being heartfelt is not the same as making everything personal. Because Moon in Leo can experience lack of attention as lack of love. Not every distraction is rejection. Not every quiet moment is a betrayal. Not every person who forgot to text back immediately is committing emotional treason against the kingdom. But this moon does not naturally enjoy feeling unimportant. Being overlooked can sting far more than people realize. It is not always about ego in the shallow sense. Very often, it is about the heart wanting proof that the bond is alive. So people with this placement often need to learn how to stay secure even when external validation is not constantly arriving. Not become cold. Not pretend they need nothing. Not reduce themselves to somebody more convenient and emotionally neutral. Just build enough inner steadiness that affection becomes nourishment, not oxygen. Now, when Moon is in Leo, the emotional nature is usually expressive. They are not always subtle about what they need. If they are happy, the room usually knows. If they are upset, the atmosphere often changes. If they feel loved, they tend to become warmer, brighter, and more generous. There can be something incredibly alive about this. A lot of people treat emotions like confidential paperwork they hope no one asks about. Moon in Leo often does not work like that. Their emotional life tends to have color, personality, and directness that can make them easy to feel. And that matters, because even when this placement is dramatic, there is often something sincere in it. They are not always trying to manufacture a reaction. Very often, they are simply responding from the heart in real time. The feeling may be large, but the feeling is usually real. Sometimes very real. Sometimes real enough to become a full monologue with internal costume changes. Now, let's talk about what makes this moon feel safe. Moon in Leo needs warmth it can trust. It needs appreciation. It needs affection. It needs the sense that its emotional presence is welcome and valued. This is why dismissive or emotionally withholding environments can feel especially difficult for this placement. Too much coolness, too much indifference, too much. I guess that was nice, delivered with the energy of expired yogurt. All of that can make Moon in Leo close up or overcompensate. And when this moon overcompensates, it does not become quieter. It becomes louder. There is a strong protective quality here. Moon in Leo often protects itself through pride. If it feels ignored, embarrassed, unappreciated, or emotionally sidelined, the instinct may be to act as though it does not care, while caring extremely much in high definition. That can look like dramatic withdrawal, visible disappointment, defensive confidence, or suddenly deciding that everyone around them is emotionally underqualified. Underneath it, there is usually one simple instinct. If my heart is not safe here, I will not leave it exposed. So even though Leo is often described as confident, the moon here can actually be very sensitive in a proud, radiant way. Not weak. Exposed. There is a difference. This placement may appear self-assured, but it often feels things deeply when love, attention, or acknowledgement are involved. And because the style is so open-hearted, rejection can hit harder than people assume. That is why Moon in Leo people are often misunderstood. Others may think they are too much, just because the feeling is visible. But visible does not mean false. Expressive does not mean shallow. This moon usually feels with sincerity, and sincerity does not always arrive in a quiet package. And sometimes that openness is a gift. Sometimes it makes disappointment harder to hide. Now, in relationships, Moon in Leo needs warmth and loyalty, not emotional minimalism, not cold detachment, not a connection where affection is treated like a rare mineral that must be rationed carefully to preserve the ecosystem. They need heart. They usually do better when people are kind, responsive, affectionate, and genuine. Not performative, not manipulative, not playing cool for sport. Emotional generosity matters here. If something is good, say so. If you care, show it. If the bond matters, act like it. This moon wants love that feels alive. Even if life is stressful, even if people are imperfect, there needs to be some warmth in the structure. Some sign that the connection has pulse. Moon in Leo often struggles in relationships where love is implied, but rarely expressed. It is not that they need constant praise. It is that they need emotional sunlight. And yes, that is a real requirement. Human beings are basically houseplants with taxes. Moon in Leo would just like that to be acknowledged. They also need relationships that allow the heart to stay open. This does not mean constant performance. It means sincerity. Something where affection is natural instead of awkward, rationed, or delivered like an administrative update. Moon in Leo tends to struggle when emotional life becomes cold, stale, or overly transactional. If the bond starts feeling joyless, unseen, or chronically undernourished, the heart often begins to withdraw or demand more visible proof of love. Now, one of the most beautiful things about this placement is that it can be incredibly generous. They often love with their whole chest. They often encourage others warmly. They often bring joy, confidence, and emotional brightness into the lives of people they care about. There is devotion here, a kind of radiant loyalty. Life gets heavy, and this moon often responds by trying to bring courage, warmth, and heart back into the room. That is a real strength. They are not naturally built for emotional deadness. They are built for animation. And yes, sometimes that creates tremendous resilience. Sometimes it creates pride that refuses to admit hurt. Again, both things can be true. This is why emotional maturity with Moon in Leo often involves learning that dignity is not the same as defensiveness. It is also honesty. It is also humility. It is also letting people know you are hurt before the situation turns into a silent Shakespeare festival. Because this moon placement can take disappointment very personally. The good news is that it usually also has a strong capacity for joy. Moon in Leo is often warm-hearted, playful, affectionate, and eager to reconnect when love is real. Often the system responds well to kindness, sincerity, and visible care. They may react strongly when hurt, but they are also often deeply responsive to reassurance when it is genuine. That can actually be a gift. They do not always need perfection. They need heart. But the shadow side is pride, drama, or seeking validation in ways that create unnecessary emotional spectacle. That is where problems start. The feeling is real. The need is real. The performance is not always necessary. Now, let's talk about childhood patterns because the moon often points there too. With Moon in Leo, there is often some early lesson around visibility, approval, or emotional expression. Maybe being noticed mattered. Maybe praise was important. Maybe self-expression was encouraged. Maybe they learned, consciously or not, that warmth had to be earned through being lovable, bright, strong, or impressive. Not in every case, of course, but very often, this placement grows through developing a strong relationship to recognition, affection, and emotional pride. As adults, that can make them confident, creative, and loving, but it can also make disregard feel sharper than it objectively looks from the outside. Because when your heart is built to shine, dimming does not feel neutral. It feels personal. Moon in Leo often trusts warmth before it trusts distance. And that is important to understand. Because the deeper need here is not applause for existing. It is emotional confirmation. It is the ability to love openly and know that love is landing somewhere real. It is the sense that the heart can show up without being mocked, minimized, or treated like it should really calm down and become more efficient. In daily life, this moon usually benefits from emotional warmth. Affection helps. Creativity helps. Play helps. Encouragement helps. Laughter helps. Feeling appreciated helps. When they are flat, discouraged, or emotionally underfed, the whole system can lose brightness. This placement does not do especially well with cold routine that has no joy in it. It needs vitality. Sometimes the cure is not another serious conversation about emotional structure and strategic lessons. Sometimes the cure is literally being loved correctly. Now, let's talk about the shadow patterns more clearly. The first is prideful defensiveness, getting hurt and then acting as though nothing matters, while internally writing a full emotional resignation letter in gold ink. The second is validation seeking, looking outside themselves so often for reassurance that the emotional center becomes dependent on being noticed. The third is dramatization, turning pain into performance because direct vulnerability feels too exposed. Moon in Leo matures a lot when it learns that real strength does not require constant display, and real love does not have to be proven through spectacle. Another important lesson here is that attention and attunement are not the same thing. This moon absolutely needs acknowledgement, but sometimes it seeks reaction when what it actually needs is tenderness. Being seen is important, yes, but being understood matters too. And if that distinction is missed, the emotional life can become overly focused on response rather than depth. Not ideal. So part of the growth is learning how to ask for warmth directly, rather than creating a whole solar event around the fact that the room feels cold. The healthiest moon in Leo knows how to stay open-hearted without making every emotional bruise into a royal emergency. Now, when this placement is working well, it is warm, loyal, expressive, and emotionally life-giving. It brings heart. It brings generosity. It brings a strong ability to make love feel visible, joyful, and real. These people can be incredibly uplifting for others because Moon in Leo understands something important. People often become more fully themselves when they are genuinely appreciated. This placement knows how to encourage. It knows how to cheer people on. It knows how to create emotional warmth that helps others feel less ashamed of being alive and human. That said, not all visibility is intimacy, and that is the refinement. The goal is not to become less expressive, less loving, or less emotionally radiant. The goal is steadiness, to shine without depending on applause, to love without making pride the gatekeeper of vulnerability, to stay warm without needing every room to prove your importance before you can relax. Because Moon in Leo has real strength, not the cold kind, not the hidden kind, the heart-led kind, the kind that loves openly, the kind that stays generous, the kind that reminds people that warmth is not weakness and joy is not superficial. It may not always be the quietest moon placement. It may not always be the most understated. It may not always enjoy emotional austerity, chronic detachment, or people who think saying whatever counts as conflict resolution. But it is wholehearted. And in a world full of emotional coolness, irony, and people acting like caring less is some kind of spiritual achievement, that kind of warmth has real value. This was the Moon in Leo. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and book a consultation for a more personal understanding of your chart.